Winter 1692. Salem village sleeps beneath snow that will soon run red. What began as children's games became America's darkest chapter. 20 souls would die. The real killer was never caught. 9-year-old Betty Paris writhes on her bedroom floor, screaming words no Puritan child should know. Her father, Reverend Samuel Paris, watches helplessly. Evil has entered his home, or so he believes. But what if Betty wasn't possessed? What if she was simply a child caught in the crossfire of adult hatred, political ambition, and a community ready to destroy itself? Salem was never one village. It was two communities locked in bitter feuds over land, power, and God's favor. The witch trials didn't create these divisions. They weaponized them completely. Tituba, enslaved woman from Barbados, told fortunes using egg whites and mirrors. To bored Puritan girls, she offered forbidden magic. To history, she became the perfect scapegoat. The girls' accusations began with outsiders, the slave, the beggar, the midwife who attended too many stillbirths. They targeted those Salem already whispered about in the darkness. Sarah Good, homeless and pregnant, cursed her neighbors when they refused her bread. When her own 4-year-old daughter accused her of witchcraft, Sarah's fate was forever sealed. Martha Corey questioned the girls' visions publicly. "How can we know what spirit they see?" she asked. It was the last rational question Salem would hear for months. The afflicted girls convulsed in court, claiming invisible specters choked them. Judges watched theater and called it evidence. Performance had become prosecution's most powerful and deadly weapon. Rebecca Nurse, 71 and beloved, seemed safe from accusation. Her arrest shattered Salem's last illusion that virtue could protect anyone from the growing unstoppable hysteria spreading everywhere. Deputy Governor William Stoughton arrived with special courts and zero tolerance for doubt. Better that 10 suspected witches should escape than one innocent person should be condemned. He believed the opposite. The first to die was Bridget Bishop, known for her red bodice and tavern arguments. She wore silk when Puritan women wore wool. Independence became clear evidence of evil. Bridget's last words: "I am no witch. I am innocent." The crowd dispersed quickly after her neck snapped. Even zealots struggled to watch their neighbors die so brutally. Reverend George Burroughs, former Salem minister, recited the Lord's Prayer perfectly on the gallows. Witches supposedly couldn't speak holy words. The crowd wavered but still watched him hang. John Proctor's wife Elizabeth was pregnant. Executions of expectant mothers were delayed. John chose to die rather than sign a false confession and live with unbearable permanent shame. "Because it is my name," Proctor shouted. "How may I live without my name?" He chose death over dishonor. His signature would have saved his life but condemned his soul. Martha Corey's husband Giles, 80 years old, was pressed to death under heavy stones. Asked to enter a plea, he said only, "More weight." His defiance echoed through eternity. Each stone added to Giles's chest was meant to force words from his lips. Instead, it silenced Salem's most powerful voice of resistance. Courage had found its gravestone. The trials consumed Salem like wildfire consumes dry wood. Accusations spread from village to town, targeting merchants, ministers, and even the governor's wife. Nobody was safe from suspicion. Captain John Alden Jr., son of a Mayflower passenger, was accused by the afflicted girls. When he fled to New York, Salem realized its madness had no boundaries. Ann Putnam Jr., 12 years old, accused more people than any other accuser. Her finger pointed like a loaded weapon at neighbors her family had feuded with for generations. The Putnam family had lost land disputes, elections, and social standing. The witch trials gave them what courts couldn't: revenge against their enemies disguised as divine righteousness. Samuel Parris, Salem's minister, kept detailed records of accusations. His handwriting reveals the mechanical precision with which neighbors condemned each other to death without mercy or hesitation. 20 people died, but not one confession was recanted by survivors. Even facing death, the accused chose truth over life. Their integrity outlasted their accusers' hatred and cruelty. Susanna Martin laughed at her accusers in court. "What? Do you think I have no better things to do than fly about at night frightening silly girls?" She mocked them. Her laughter died with her on Gallows Hill. Salem had forgotten how to distinguish between courage and witchcraft, between innocence and guilt, between justice and cold-blooded murder. Reverend Increase Mather, Cotton Mather's father, warned, "It were better that 10 suspected witches should escape than one innocent person should be condemned." His voice was completely ignored. Cotton Mather, Harvard-educated and witch-obsessed, called spectral evidence God's gift to justice. His intellect became stupidity's most dangerous weapon in Salem's growing arsenal of pure hatred. The afflicted girls claimed specters attended Black Sabbaths, signed Satan's book, and tortured them in dreams. Reality and nightmare blurred until truth vanished completely from Salem's consciousness. Mary Warren, servant in the Proctor household, tried to recant her accusations. The other girls immediately accused her of witchcraft. Honesty had become the deadliest confession of all. She stood at the crossroads every accused faced. Confess to lies and live, or maintain truth and die. Her choice would determine whether courage or cowardice defined her legacy. Mary chose survival over honesty, rejoining her fellow accusers. Truth had its martyrs, but lies had their converts. Salem rewarded betrayal and punished integrity with equal mechanical precision. The jail overflowed with over 200 accused witches. Conditions were medieval: chains, darkness, starvation, and the constant sound of weeping. Imprisonment became slow, deliberate execution. Sarah Osborne died in prison before trial, her body broken by chains and cold. She became the 21st victim, forgotten because she never reached the gallows for public execution. Governor William Phipps returned from fighting Indians to find his colony executing its own citizens. War abroad seemed completely sane compared to the madness consuming Salem's soul. When accusers targeted his wife, Lady Mary Phipps, the governor's perspective shifted dramatically. Witch hunts were entertaining until they threatened those in power personally and directly. October 1692, Governor Phipps suspended the court of Oyer and Terminer. His wife's danger accomplished what 20 deaths couldn't: the end of Salem's bloody, horrific nightmare. The last executions occurred on September 22, 1692. 8 souls died that day, 5 women, 3 men. Their names deserve remembrance: Martha Corey, Mary Easty, Alice Parker, Mary Parker, Ann Pudiator, Wilmot Red, Margaret Scott, Samuel Wardwell. Mary Easty's petition to the court remains Salem's most eloquent plea for sanity. "I petition not for my own life, but that no more innocent blood may be shed." Her words fell on ears deafened by hysteria. She died knowing her death was meaningless but hoping it might save others. Sacrifice had found its perfect, unwilling saint. Thomas Brattle, Boston merchant, wrote the letter that ended Salem's madness. He exposed spectral evidence as legal insanity and saved Massachusetts from further shame and bloodshed. The devil can never assume the shape of an innocent person, judges had declared. Brattle proved them wrong with logic, reason, and courage Salem had completely forgotten. The trials ended not with revelation but exhaustion. Salem had consumed its own children and found them bitter. The appetite for blood finally exceeded the community's stomach. 150 people were accused, 20 executed, 5 died in prison, 1 was pressed to death, and hundreds of families were shattered forever. This was Salem's final tally. The afflicted girls vanished from history after the trials ended. Their names disappeared like smoke, their fates unknown. They had served their purpose and were immediately discarded. Ann Putnam Jr. later apologized publicly, claiming she was deluded by Satan into making false accusations. Her confession came 12 years too late for all her victims. Samuel Parris was forced from Salem's pulpit in 1697. The minister who started the madness ended his career in poverty and obscurity. History had rendered its harsh verdict. The real Sarah Good's 4-year-old daughter, Dorothy, spent 8 months chained in prison. Her mind never recovered from the trauma. Innocence had its youngest casualty in Salem's war. Massachusetts reversed the attainder of those executed in 1711, clearing their names legally. But reputation, once murdered, proved harder to resurrect than the innocent dead themselves. Compensation was paid to victims' families, 20 pounds here, 50 there. The colony tried to purchase forgiveness with coins as if money could resurrect the brutally murdered. Salem Village changed its name to Danvers in 1752, hoping geography could erase memory. But history proved a more persistent ghost than any the trials had conjured. The witch house still stands today, the only structure directly connected to the trials. Tourists photograph what locals once preferred to forget. Commerce conquered shame completely. Bridget Bishop's orchard became a parking lot. Martha Corey's farm became a suburb. Progress buried Salem's victims beneath asphalt and amnesia more effectively than simple graves. The real witches of Salem were fear, greed, and the human capacity for cruelty disguised as righteousness. These spirits possessed the accusers and judges more completely than devils. Every generation rediscovers Salem's lessons through its own hysteria. McCarthyism, satanic panic, social media witch hunts. The accusers change, but the pattern persists eternally and predictably. We remember Salem not for its victims' guilt, but for our own. The real horror isn't that witches existed, but that neighbors became executioners willingly and eagerly. Arthur Miller's The Crucible made Salem a metaphor for all witch hunts. Fiction succeeded where history failed, making Salem's dead serve the living with lasting purpose. The Salem Witch Trials Memorial, dedicated in 1992, lists 20 names on stone benches. Visitors leave flowers, but do they truly understand the price of deadly prejudice? Rebecca Nurse's homestead remains, restored to honor her memory. The woman Salem murdered in 1692 now teaches tolerance to school children 3 centuries later through historical education. Gallows Hill was recently identified through archaeology. The exact spot where 20 died now sits beneath a Walgreens parking lot. History hides in plain sight, forgotten beneath commerce. What Salem really reveals is how quickly civilization can collapse when fear replaces reason. When accusation becomes evidence, when neighbors become enemies overnight without warning or mercy. The 20 who died weren't martyrs. They were ordinary people caught in extraordinary madness. Their ordinariness makes their courage more remarkable, not less significant to history's judgment. Salem's legacy isn't about witchcraft. It's about the witch inside every community waiting for permission to hunt. That permission, once given, proves nearly impossible to revoke or control. We study Salem not to condemn the past, but to recognize the present. Every time neighbors turn against neighbors, Salem's ghost walks among us once again. The most chilling fact about Salem, it required no supernatural intervention. Ordinary human nature, given fear and permission, accomplished what devils supposedly could not achieve through magic. 26 people died because their neighbors chose fear over love, suspicion over trust, revenge over forgiveness. Salem's real curse was the complete abandonment of human decency and compassion. Salem ended when enough people chose courage over cowardice, truth over convenience, justice over revenge. The lesson: goodness requires active choice, not passive silence or willful ignorance. The graves on Gallows Hill remember what Salem forgot: that accusations are easy, but truth is precious. That destruction takes moments, but redemption requires generations of careful work. In 1692, Salem asked the wrong question: who among us is evil? The right question then and now: what evil lies within us all waiting for permission? Salem's 20 victims achieved what their killers never could: immortality through innocence. Their names endure while their accusers vanished into shame's eternal darkness. Truth always survives evil.